beds, 44% utilize ang ward beds at 34% ang ating mga ventilators. Sa NCR po, 42% po ang nagagamit na ICU beds, 39% po ang nagagamit na isolation beds, 35% po ang nagagamit na ward beds at 31% po ang nagagamit na ventilators. Sa ibang usapin, pinirpahan po ni Presidente Rodrigo Roa Duterte kahapon, June 30, 2021, ang Republic Act No. 11569 na nag-extend ng real estate amnesty. Binibigyan ng batas na hanggang June 14, 2023 ang pagpa-file po ng sinumpaang estate amnesty return. Isa pa pong good news, mamayang hapon po ay pangungunahan ni Presidente Rodrigo Roa Duterte kasama ni DOTR Secretary Artugade ang inauguration ng LRT2 East Extension Project. 2 istasyon po ang madadagdag sa LRT2, ang Marikina Pasig Station at ang Antipolo Station. Ang proyektong ito ay 2 decades in the making. 1999 ho nang ito'y unang pinilano. 2012, inaaprubahan ng NEDA Board at taong 2017 naman nagsimula ang aktual na construction. Sa pagbubukas ng LRT2, bababa ang travel time mula Recto sa Manila hanggang Antipolo, Rizal mula sa kasalukuyang 3 oras na biyahe gamit ang bus o jeepney sa 30 to 40 minuto na lamang. Oras na maging operational ang proyekto sa July 6, 2021, madadagdagan ng 80,000 na pasahero kada araw ang kasalukuyang 240,000 passenger capacity ng LRT2. Sa ibang usapin, ang buwan ng Hulyo ay Nutrition Month. Ang Nutrition Month ay may temong malnutrition patuloy sa labanan, first 1,000 days tututukan. Ito ay panawagan para sa lahat na magtulong-tulong para lutasin ang malubhang problema ng malnutrition sa ating bansa at paintingin palalo ang mga serbisyo sa first 1,000 days ng buhay. Sa kampanya na pinangungunahan ng National Nutrition Council, pinapahalagahan ang wastong nutrisyon para mapalakas ang ating resistensya laban sa sakit, lalo na laban sa COVID-19, makamit ang tamang paglaki ng mga bata at maging produktibo ang ating mga mamamayan. Mabuhay po ang National Nutrition Council. Dito po nagtatapos sa ating presentasyon. Unahin ko na po si Mayor Jerry Treñas. Mayor Treñas, kamusta na po ang estado ng COVID sa ating syudad at ano pa po ang mga iba pa ninyong mga pangangailangan dito sa syudad?
Secretary, first of all, I would like to thank the National IATF through you, Secretary Roque and Secretary Galvez, for allowing the delivery of 50,000 Sinovac vaccines to Iloilo City. Aside from this, we have seen the ventilators, the high-flow oxygen cannula, and additional PPE for our frontliners. Kami po nagpapasalamat kay Presidente Rodrigo Duterte at saka sa national government sa mga tulong na pinadala dito. Papasalamat din kami sa presensya ni Yusek Leopoldo Vega, ni Asek Ong, ni Director Ariel ng DOH kasi kailangan namin ng tulong para improve ang amin na healthcare capacity. And we need all the support that we can get. And we are very thankful to the national government and especially to you for your physical presence here in Iloilo City. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mayor Treñas. May we ask for a few words from our Congresswoman of the Lone District of Iloilo City, Congresswoman Jamjab Baronda.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Secretary Harry Roque. Of course, the presence of DOH and together with Mayor Jerry Treñas, Ilonggo felt the presence of the national government. And we would like to say thank you in advance to President Rodrigo Roa Duterte. And of course, salamat din sa kay Secretary Galvez, Secretary Lorenzana. And I would like also say thank you to Secretary Bebot Bello because after this, we need to reboot the economy. He gave us 50 million pesos para sa COVID adjustment program para sa 10,000 transport sector for Iloilo City. So again, thank you sa vaccines. I hope that with the support of our barangay captains, with the support of every Ilonggo, with the leadership of our beloved Mayor Jerry Treñas, who is so assertive, matulungan po natin. At together, we will face this COVID. Salamat, Secretary.
Kasama rin po natin ngayon si Treatment Czar Yusek Vega. No? Yusek, ano po ang plano nyo while you are here in Iloilo? Because I understand you will be spending the night here in Iloilo. The floor is yours, Yusek Vega.
Good morning po sa lahat, Spok Harry, Mayor Jerry, and of course, Congresswoman Jam Jam. Unang-una po, papasalamat kami for the very warm reception given to us by Iloilo City and the city officials here. Ang Iloilo po ngayon at present is on moderate risk category. That means that the 2-week growth rate is already negative, but the ADAR, which is the average daily attack rate, is still high. But ang problema po sa Iloilo City ay yung HCUR, yung ating healthcare utilization rate, lalong-lalo na sa intensive care units, kasi nasa critical risk position. And this is the reason why we are here together with the Secretary and my DOH family to talk to the different medical directors and hospital institutions, both public and private, on how best we can adjust to the crisis or to the surge that we have here in Iloilo. That means that we need to come up with better strategies on making sure that the critical and severe cases from in Iloilo and from the nearby provinces will be can access the critical care units here in Iloilo City. So on behalf of the Department of Health, Secretary Francisco Duque, we are here to support Iloilo City.
Okay, tuloy na po tayo sa open forum and you can ask any questions from anyone in the panel. No? As usual po, when we go on an out-of-town press briefing, we will be alternating. Unahin po natin ang Malacanang Press Corps and then the local media will be moderated by our Lizelle Lamasan of the Philippine Information Agency. So, Yusek Roque, go ahead please.
Yes, good afternoon, Secretary Roque at sa ating po mga bisita. From Laila Salaveria of Inquirer, question number 1 niya, what does the government think of the World Bank report that based on 3 multi-country assessments, Philippine students are faring poorly in math, reading, and science even before COVID, and the crisis in education will have been made worse by COVID?
Well, that is very disturbing po and very alarming. And I'm sure Secretary Lynn Briones and her team at the Department of Education will sit down and study as well as discuss ways forward upon receiving this World Bank report. Pag po kayo mag-alala, pag-aaralan po mabuti natin kung ano yung sinasabi ng report at titignan po natin kung paano natin mababago ang ating curriculum, lalong-lalo na sa panahon po ng pandemya.
Second question po niya, since face-to-face classes are out of the picture for now, what interventions will it do to improve the quality of education and address other concerns such as students' low growth mindset and poor nutrition?
Well, sa poor nutrition po, no, I was the author in the 17th Congress of the masustansyang pagkain para sa mga kabataan, no. Although wala po tayong face-to-face, tuloy naman po yung programang yan, dinideliver po sa ating mga kabataan yung masustansyang pagkain at dinagdagan pa po natin ang libreng gatas na programa, no, para dun sa mga kulang na timbang. Pagdating po sa mga innovations, palagi naman po nag-i-innovate ang ating Department of Education. We are on blended learning po. We utilize modules, we utilize TV, radio, as well as computer-aided forms of educational material po. No? But I'm sure that the process of adapting to the new normal continues, and the Department of Education will continue to introduce innovations.
Third question po niya, what has the President said, if any, about reports that allege drug lord Peter Lim has slipped out of the country?
Well, wala pa po namang konfirmasyon po yan, no? Dahil lang sabi po ng ating Department of Justice na under po ang immigration, wala pa po silang record na nakalabas po si Peter Lim. No? Pero nonetheless, nasa watchlist naman po ng Interpol na itong si Peter Lim. At saka I'm sure po na gagawa ng hakbang ang DOJ to cancel his passport and to make sure that because he has no travel documentation, that wherever he may be, kung abroad man siya, maalerto yung mga receiving state kung nasa saan siya.
Last question po ni Laila Salaveria, what does the palace say to concerns that this shows that the drug war only targets the poor and treats those with connection and influence differently?
Unang-unang po, wanted si Peter Lim. Wala po siyang kalayaan. Pangalawa po, nakakulong po si Senator Laila de Lima. Proof na hindi lang po mahihirap ang tinatarget dito sa war on drugs.
Thank you, Secretary Roque.
Punta muna tayo kay Lizelle for local media question before we go to a Zoom question from Mela. Go ahead, Lizelle.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Lizelle Marilamasan of the Philippine Information Agency, and at this time, I'd like to acknowledge Mr. Joel Franco of RMN Iloilo for his question.
Secretary, good afternoon. Ano bang guidelines natin in allocating vaccines sa mga LGUs? Because seemingly, parang may pabago-bago tayong sistema on how we allocate vaccines sa bawat LGUs.
Pabago-bago po talaga yan kasi depende sa sitwasyon ng COVID sa iba't ibang lugar. So kung dati po walang prioridad ang Iloilo City, ngayon po meron ng prioridad because of the recent surge. Kaya nga po nagkaroon tayo ng tinatawag na NCR plus 8 plus 10 at kasama na po sa area na mabigyan ng prioridad ang Iloilo City. And this explains why medyo malaki po yung na-deliver natin ngayon, no, na 50,000 na Sinovac.
So, do we say na pag hindi magkakaroon ng surge ang isang LGU, hindi sila makatatanggap ng mismatched na number of vaccines?
Well, ang ating allocation po really is dependent on population, no, and incidence of COVID. Yun yung kinukonsidera po natin. There is actually a mathematical formula in the same way that we have a formula for our community classification. No? So we always look at yung 2-week average attack rate, yung average attack rate, healthcare utilization rate, also in giving, in determining the allocation of a given area for vaccines. Uulitin ko po, vaccines will prevent diseases, pero ang epekto po ng vaccines will be felt 5 weeks later. So kinakailangan po, ang primary weapon natin against the COVID is prevention, mask, hugas, iwas, and detection sa aggressive testing po natin, isolation, contact tracing.
Kukunin ko lang po yung reaksyon nyo sa sinabi ni Mayor Jerry Treñas kanina na parang iba yung vaccine na ibinibigay sa mga malalaking syudad doon sa NCR tapos iba naman dito sa lungsod ng Iloilo.
Well, meron pong cold storage capacity ang Iloilo City, so makakarating po sa kanila yung mga dito po, so yung mga sub-zero vaccines. Kakadating nga lang po nung isang araw ng Moderna. So give it time po, no? Makakarating naman po yan sa lahat ng mga urban centers na merong cold storage capacity. So hindi lang po Moderna yan, meron po tayong 40 million na darating na Pfizer, and Pfizer will make it also to Iloilo City. Okay, Mela Lesmoras of PTV4 by Zoom, please.
Hi, good afternoon, Secretary Roque at sa ating mga guests po ngayon. Secretary Roque, on green countries lang po, I understand na sa IATF resolution na rin naman ito, pero para mas marinig ng ating mga kababayan, lalo na ibang nagtatanong bakit yung kanilang bansa na pinagtutuluyan ngayon ay wala sa listahan, ano po ba yung mga naging basehan ng ating IATF at ng DOH sa pagpili nitong green countries? At ito po ba ay definite na o may chance pa na madagdagan pa sa mga susunod na araw at buwan?
Well, depende po sa kaso ng COVID dun sa mga lugar na yon, magbabago po yan. Pero ang tinitignan po natin, hindi lang yung percentage ng mga nabakunahan sa mga areas classified as green countries, kung hindi, yung prevalence rate din po. No? Binasa ko po kung ano yung criteria. No? So, similar po yan doon sa tinatawag nating attack rate at 2-week attack rate na binabasihan natin sa ating quarantine classification. Siyempre po, titignan natin yung dami ng COVID doon sa mga lugar na yan. Alam ko po, marami nagtatanong na ang Estados Unidos hindi pa po kasama dyan sa tinatawag nating green countries kasi mataas nga po ang mga kaso ng COVID sa Estados Unidos ngayon.
Opo. And Secretary Roque, another follow-up po about sa green countries kasi may mga OFWs po tayong nakausap na like sa Hong Kong, may ilan na pwedeng umuwi pero nasa 8 days lang or 2 weeks or mas maunti nga lang. So ang tanong ng ilan, may chance po kaya na dumating yung panahon na wala ng quarantine at all, swab test na lang? At if ever man, kailan po kaya natin nakikitang darating yung panahong ganito?
Well, ang tanong mo, if there is a possibility, there is always a possibility. Pero sa ngayon po, from what I know, no, wala pa rin pong bansa na hayaang pumapasok ang kahit sino na wala pong quarantine. Lalong-lalo na po dahil meron nga po tayong Delta variant. At least dito po sa karatig bansa natin. I know that people can freely go to the United States, no, without a quarantine requirement, pero increasingly dito po sa lugar na ng daigdig kung saan na tayo, talagang meron pong quarantine requirement. Although marami na pong nagle-lessen to 7 days ang quarantine period para sa mga vaccinated individuals, gaya po ng ginawa natin.
Opo. And may final question na lamang po, Secretary Roque. Officially today, pumasok na tayo sa second half ng taong 2021. Nasa na po tayo ngayon sa ating laban kontra COVID-19? At yun nga, sa gitna pa rin itong Delta variant at iba pang variants ng COVID-19. Confident pa rin po ba tayo na ma-achieve natin yung better Christmas?
Yes, confident pa rin po tayo for a better Christmas. We've exceeded the 10 million mark for vaccination. We have managed the COVID cases in Metro Manila +8 na naging kuta talaga ng COVID-19. There are more areas now under MECQ, but population-wise, ang population naman is not as great as when the numbers were so high or at its peak dito po sa Metro Manila +8. No? And we're confident that with more supplies of the vaccine coming in, mas maraming mabibigyan ng protection and we can move towards containment and a better Christmas this year.
Okay, thank you so much.
Punta tayo ulit kay Yusek Roque.
Thank you, Secretary Roque.
Thank you very much, Mela. Yusek Roque, please.
Yes, thank you, Secretary Roque. From Margot Gonzalez ng SMNI. Within this week daw po ay lilipad na si Senator Manny Pacquiao para sa fight niya sa laban niya sa Agosto. Totohanin ba ni Presidente ang banta niya sakaling mabibigo ang senador na magpalabas ng listahan ng mga korap na ahensya?
Well, inaantay po ni Presidente yung listahan ng mga korap na ahensya ni Senator Pacquiao. No? Gaya ng sinabi ko kahapon, bagamat sinabi niya isa dun sa ahensyang yun ay DOH, talaga naman pong naimbestigahan na yan fully ng Senado. No? So wala pong bago dun sa sinabi niyang departamento na DOH. So sana nga po, bago man umalis si Senator Pacquiao, makapagsabik siya kung sino talaga ang dapat maimbestigahan dahil ang mensahe ni Presidente, hindi po niya tinotolerate ang korupsyon. Malaman lang niya kung saan meron sunog at papatayin niya yung sunog na yun.
Opo. For Yusek Vega, question from Sweden Velado of PTV. Yusek Vega, may recent study na ipinalabas ang University of Oxford saying mixing doses of Pfizer and AstraZeneca vaccines creates a strong immune response. If this can make use of the scarce vaccines are more flexible, are we also willing to do it in the country? Yusek Vega.
Yusek Vega, nakuha niyo po yung question. Unfortunately, can we find the way to have a monitor so we can hear the questions here? Subukan lang natin na kasi all the rest of the panelists, hindi nila naririnig yung nangyayari mga questions and everyone else, no? So if we could find a way to broadcast, siguro even through a cellphone, lalagyan natin ng mic para alam lang ang mga questions. But Yusek Vega, the question is, may recent study na linabas ang Oxford po saying mixing doses of Pfizer and AstraZeneca creates a strong immune response. If this can make use of scarce vaccines more flexible, are we willing to do it in this country?
Thank you, Spokari. Tama ho yun. There's a preliminary results lumalabas na itong mixing and matching of different vaccine platforms, kagaya ng AstraZeneca at saka Pfizer, has been done. And they found out that people injected with AstraZeneca and Pfizer, or the other way around, had a good quantity of antibodies and cell-mediated immunity. Very effective in terms of the results, but this is just a very preliminary study. What they're saying is that we still have to make use of the bigger clinical trials, which is actually the same vaccine or the same platforms. But this study actually is a very good, is a good chance, and good also to recommend that later on there might be a flexibility in terms of mixing and matching different vaccines. So with probably in the near future, when we have on the near a bigger study that has to be concluded, I think this will be a better perspective or advantage for countries wherein the vaccines are not are limited into the supplies that are coming in. So mixing and matching would be a very good strategy and a form of flexibility for the population to get vaccinated.
May second question siya.
Okay.
May second question siya, Secretary Roque. Where are we right now in terms of studying the possibility of mixing and matching vaccines? Are we purely dependent on WHO guidelines?
Yusek, may follow-up question sa'yo. May follow-up question sa'yo. Ulitin ko lang po yung tanong, no? Where are we in terms of studying the possibility of mixing and matching vaccines? Are we purely dependent on WHO guidelines?
Yes, we are very much dependent on the clinical trials done, especially on bigger centers, and of course the WHO guidelines. And definitely once there would be a very clear recommendation of mixing and matching different vaccines, I think that would be the strategy of the national vaccination implementation.
Thank you, Yusek. Can we go now to Lizelle for a question from the local media, please?
Thank you, Secretary Roque. Our next question comes from Mr. Arniel Lumbo of RGMA.
Secretary, good morning. Are we saying here that the rollout is dependent on whether deaths and sicknesses are prevalent and on the rise before national government attention is given?
No, we are distributing vaccines to all on the basis of population. No? But of course, we are giving more to areas with local surges.
So it depends on the recommendation of DOH or every region?
It will depend on the recommendation of experts, yes, and epidemiologists.
One more thing, Secretary. When we can see realization of equitable distribution of vaccines, ano ang inyong masasabi sa mga Ilonggo who are desperate for protection?
Alam niyo po, ang katotohanan, hindi po sapat ang bakuna sa ngayon. Lahat po ng ating mga kababayan ay sasabi, kulang po ang bakuna. Yes, there are more sometimes given to Metro Manila plus 8 areas, not only because of the higher cases there, but also because of the higher population. But it is never enough as of now. Hindi lang po tayong nauubusan ng supply, buong Pilipinas po yan. We ask your indulgence po because unfortunately, we do not manufacture the vaccines. Meron po talagang scarcity of supply worldwide. Ngayon po, lumuluwag na po ang supply because yung mga mayayamang bansa na naunang kumorner ng mga bakuna ay natatapos na po ng kanilang vaccination program gaya ng Estados Unidos na inaasahan natin magdedeklara ng independence from COVID sa July 4. So lumuluwag nga po ang supply. Kaya nga po naka-order na po tayo ng 40 million na Pfizer. hindi lang po Iloilo nagkukulang ng baksin. Lahat po ng syudad, lahat ng probinsya, lahat ng sulok ng Pilipinas, kulang po talaga ang baksin. Kasi hindi po dumarating siya na isang kulto lamang. Unti-unti po talaga ang pagdating. Kaya nga po, doon sa unti-unti na pagdating ng supply, mayroon tayong binibigyan ng priority, yung mga most vulnerable. At ngayon po, habang dumadaming supply, ni-include na natin ang economic frontliners. So humihingi po kami ng pasensya dahil yan po ang realidad. We cannot do anything about it. Sabi nga po ni Secretary Galvez, kahit anong gawin natin na talagang we're limited by the fact na kakaunti po talaga ang supply ng mga bakuna. But I think our strategy worked kasi kung inantay natin yung mga preferred vaccines na ginagawa sa West, we would not have successfully vaccinated in excess of 10 million people already before the first sizable amount of Western vaccines arrive in the country. So I ask for the patience po of my kapwa Ilonggo. Hindi lang po tayo ang talagang nagreklamo na kulang ang vaccine. It's the whole Philippines po. Because right now, wala pa pong 20 million ang dumating na bakuna sa ating bansa. Okay. Okay, punta tayo kay Melo Acuña please, by Zoom. Tayo kay Melo Acuña please, by Zoom. Tayo kay Melo Acuña please, by Zoom. By Zoom. By Zoom. Go ahead, Melo. Go ahead, Melo.
Okay. Kung wala pa si Melo, perhaps we should go to...
Kung wala pa si Melo, perhaps we should go to Yusek Roque, please.
Secretary Roque, question from Chris Jose of Remate. Reaksyon sa sinabi ni Senator Pacquiao na dalawang bagay ang kaya niyang panghawakan. Hindi siya tiwali at hindi siya sinungaling. Nagugat ito sa naging hamon ni Pangulong Duterte na pangalanan po ng senador ang mga corrupt officials sa gobyerno matapos naman ang naunang sinabi ni Pacquiao na malala ang korupsyon sa kasalukuyang administrasyon.
Good for him po.
Good for him po. But patuloy pong inaantay ni Presidente yung sinasabi niyang mga korap na ahensya nang sa ganun, titignan ni Presidente kung talagang kinakailangan may sibakin dyan. No? Pero kinakailangan sabihin niya kung saan yung korupsyon, anong ahensya yan at anong ebidensya niya.
Opo. Ang second question po niya, ano ang nakikita ng Malacanang sa motibo ni Pacquiao na tila binabangga si Pangulong Duterte? Sa tingin niyo, tama ba ang estratehiya ng senador para lamang maging bukang bibig ang kanyang pangalan hanggang sa halalan?
Politika po yan, no? Alam naman natin lahat, gustong tumakbo ng Presidente ni Senator Pacquiao. Sa akin po, hindi tamang estratehiya yan. Kasi napakatagal naman pong nagsama ni Senator Pacquiao at ni Presidente at sa ngayon po wala naman pong pinapangalanang pang tao ang Presidente na i-endorso niya para maging Presidente sa susunod na halalan. At paulit-ulit ko nga pong sinasabi, no? Binangkita ni Presidente sa isa sa tatlo na posible sana niya noon na na-endorso for President is Senator Manny Pacquiao. Hindi ko po alam kung bakit hindi nakapag-antay si Senator Manny Pacquiao.
Opo. Ang sunod po niyang tanong, suportado ba ng Malacanang ang multa o community service laban sa mahuhuling magtatapon ng basura sa estero, ilog at kanal na itinuturong dahilan ng MMDA kung bakit nagbabara ang mga pumping station sa Kalakhang, Maynila?
Suportado po yan, pero alam ko po meron din tayong existing laws, no, that provide for more than just community service or fines sa mga nagtatapon po ng basura sa mga esteros. Tatapon po ng basura.
Yung last question po niya, at bilang abogado, ano daw po ang tamang parusa sa mga taong mahuhuli magtatapon ng basura sa estero? Depende po yan sa ordinansa o sa batas. So we have to refer to existing laws po dahil nulong krimen, nula po na sinileche. Wala pong po pwedeng parusa kung wala pong batas o ordinansa na nagpapataw ng parusa. Okay, punta na tayo uli kay Lizelle, please. Thank you very much, Yusek Roque.
We have Ms. Jeremy Ventar from Action Radio. Good afternoon po, Secretary. What are your thoughts, Secretary, sa speech ni Mayor Jerry Trias na kulang po yung binibigay na bakuna ng National IATF sa Iloilo City?
Well, I acknowledge po na kulang talaga ang binibigay na bakuna sa buong Pilipinas, not just to Iloilo City.
Yes.
And we wish we had more vaccines. Pero as it stands po, talagang kulang po dahil kulang po talaga ang supply.
Here po in Region 6, there are government agencies and barangay captains who were reported to have violated the health protocols, particularly on physical distancing, consumption of liquor in public place, and the conduct of mass gathering event despite express prohibition of local guidelines and IATF guidelines. What are your thoughts regarding this, Secretary?
Well, nananawagan po tayo sa ating mga lokal na pamahalaan. Kinakailangan po ay i-apprehend itong mga lumalabag sa minimum health protocols kasi ito po talaga yung dahilan kung bakit dumadami ang kaso ng COVID. Habang nagkukumpulan, habang hindi po nag-observe ng minimum health standards, ayan po ang dahilan kaya dumadaming COVID. Kaya kinakailangan ipatupad po natin ang mga ordinansa na nagpapataw ng parusa doon sa mga hindi tutupad o susunod sa minimum public health standards. At meron nga pong warning ang Presidente sa mga lokal na opisyalis po kasama ng mga barangay captain kapag hindi nila pinatupad ang minimum health standards, sila mismo magkakaroon ng pananagutan on the basis of dereliction of duty. Okay, balik tayo kay Yusek Roque, please.
Yes, Secretary Roque.
Is Melo
hindi ko
Acuña
lang po
ready
alam
for
kung-
Zoom?
Kung maririnig na po ako ni Yusek Vega,
Wala na
may
si
tanong
Melo.
po sa kanya si Pia Gutierrez ng ABS-CBN.
for Zoom.
Could you give us an update sa budget
Pia Gutierrez.
Could you give us an update na pinahahanda sa inyo ni Secretary Duque at kailan ito masasabit sa office ni Senator Pacquiao?
I think the question is for Yusek Vega.
Laboratory needs for the molecular labs in the country through the DBM.
Siguro po pakiulit dahil wala po kayong mic kanina.
Okay. I'd like to confirm that the budget utilization for both for Bayanihan 1 and 2 has already been submitted to the office of Senator Pacquiao from the office of Secretary Francisco Duque. The utilization reported that for Bayanihan 1, the DOH was able to utilize 98% of the budget given. And for Bayanihan 2, 93% of this was utilized. We also submitted the report to this office of Secretary Senator Pacquiao, the procurement through PSDBM, since this is a whole of government kind of approach, and we had the support of PSDBM in the procurement of several testing kits, laboratory reagents, and of course equipments through the PSDBM, and this include the PPEs, has already also been submitted. The report on the vaccine obligation and disbursement has also been submitted to the office of Senator Pacquiao. Senator Pacquiao.
Question for Secretary Roque from Pia Gutierrez. Tinanggap na ba ng Pangulo ang resignation ni General Parlades sa NTF-ELCAC?
Our next question comes from Bombo Radio. We have Ms. Rezi Bordon.
Okay, I will answer first, Yusek Roque. Tinanggap po ang resignation ni General Parlade as spokesperson of NTF-ELCAC, no? So that's what I was able to confirm from Secretary Lorenzana. Secretary Lorenzana.
Opo. Yung susunod pong tanong,
Rocky, meron pa ba?
Opo, tanong po ni Vance Fernandez, Doon daw po sa widening rift sa ruling party ng PDP Laban, will the President consider reapproaching or asking Senator Manny Pacquiao to consider reconciliation daw po to help the party's chances of re-election in the coming 2022 presidential elections? Or will the President push through on the desires of PDP Laban party leaders to allegedly evict Pacquiao from the party presidency?
Vance, I'm a spokesperson po. I'm not a fortune teller. I cannot see the future. In politics, anything is possible. Kaya po hindi ko masasagot yan. I cannot even speculate. One thing I've learned from the very limited period of time that I've been in politics is anything is possible. Okay? Thank you, Yusek. Punta naman tayo kay Giselle, please.
Our next question comes from Bombo Radio. We have Ms. Rezi Danyoso Bordon.
Hi, Secretary. Magandang hapon po. Aside from the 50,000 doses na naipadala kahapon dito, kailan po ba ulit yung magpapadala dito ng volume na COVID-19 vaccines?
I'm not sure po, pero regular po yan. As soon as we receive further deliveries, meron na po yung programa na ipapadala nationwide yung mga bakunang yan.
Follow-up question lang po. Ano po yung help ng national government sa Iloilo City with the kakulang po ng bed capacities dito sa mga hospitals?
Yusek Vega, that's why Yusek Vega is here as the treatment czar.
Thank you, Secretary. For Iloilo City, kailangan talaga mag-usap ang medical directors and institutions on the allocation of beds specifically for the critical care. And we have already instructed the retained hospital here, the Western Visayas Medical Center and the Western Visayas Sanitarium, to make sure that they will be able to improve and allocate more critical bed units, because I think this is much more needed in terms of a surge. So we are now in the process really of increasing the capacity of the hospitals by providing them support in terms of human resource and also of equipment. So we are here really to gather them and come up with a very good strategy on how best we can actually give access, especially for COVID patients who would need critical and critical care management. Thank you.
Okay. Wala na ba tayong nasa Zoom? Meron bang nasa Zoom na taga Malacanang Press Corps? Yusek Roque, go ahead please.
Yes, question from yung last question po ni Vance Fernandez about Senator Pacquiao and Secretary Duque, nasagot niyo na po. From Lanes Capante of GMA News Online, 2 suspects arrested by NBI for kidnapping in Manila are claiming they are police assets and that they get paid for kidnapping drug suspects. Is the Palace or President aware of this practice by law enforcers?
Yan po yung illegal. Pero let me state na hindi po nila ina-allege na pulis sila. Sinasabi lang nila na they are police assets. That's an allegation. We'll have to verify that. We'll have to investigate. Napakadali po magsabi ng mga ganyang bagay. So antayin po natin ang resulta ng investigasyon.
From Joseph Morong of GMA News, are there any dangers to having 2 protocols for returning Filipinos like the one suggested in Cebu? Can this help avoid the entry of the Delta variant?
Well, sa ngayon nga po, ang desisyon ng Presidente, lahat po ay dapat sumunod po sa isang protocol, 10 araw na facility quarantine, test on the 7th day na PCR, at kung negatibo po ay release, and the last 4 days of quarantine will be at home. 4 days.
Second question po niya, why was the appeal of Lucena City to de-escalate not approved?
Sino po? Anong city?
Lucena City po. Lucena City po.
Well,
Lucena City
okay.
po.
May formula naman po yan, no? Yung 2-week ADAR, average daily attack rate, at saka ang pinaka-importante, healthcare utilization. talaga pong kapag critical, lalong-lalo na ang ICU capacity ng isang lugar, mahirap po mag-de-escalate. Kasi saan mo dadalhin yung mga magkakasakit na critical po, no, kung wala ng facilities. Yes, punta tayo kay Lizelle uli.
At this time, we have Mr. JP Hervas from Radio Pilipinas.
Mayong hapon, Secretary.
Go ahead,
sa darating na Hulyo 15, magiging higit 50 araw na mula nang isinailalim ang Iloilo City sa MECQ status. With that, may aasahan pa po bang karagdagang ayuda ang mga mamamayan ng Iloilo in order to survive this MECQ status?
Ang question is, by July 15 or?
Yes po, by July 15 po, magiging 50 days na po, yung higit 50 days na po yung MECQ status. Ano po yung may karagdagang ayuda po ba na ibibigay ng national government?
Walang alam ko po, ang DSWD should be giving ayuda also to areas under MECQ. At the same time, the local government units also are giving also ayudas, no, dahil pinagtutulong-tulungan naman po natin ito, no. Pero I will assure you na hindi ko lang nakasama ngayon ang DSWD regional officer, no, pero as soon as I leave here, I will call the DSWD and ensure na mag-release po na mas maraming ayuda ang DSWD para po sa Iloilo City.
The reason why Iloilo City requested for an appeal from the classification MECQ to GCQ with strict protocols is that our workers and our people are already hungry. And while Iloilo City continues to give out food assistance, Dole continues to give us tupad, we all know that the economic activities under MECQ are very limited. And that is why we requested for an appeal. Unfortunately, it was not approved by the IATF. I will be issuing an executive order later as soon as Secretary Roque is on his way. I will be issuing more economic activities for Iloilo City and allowing more businesses to open. But we will continue to strictly enforce the protocols. We cannot remain in this state forever. And I think Secretary Roque, as a former congressman who already also attended to his constituents, will also understand that really people have to work, whether we like it or not. And we cannot forever give food assistance. Even the SWD is telling us they can only give so much. So far, we have been in MECQ for the past 45 days already. And talagang hirap na talaga ang tao dito sa Iloilo. Thank you.
Anyway, kaya isa po yan sa mission ni Yusek Vega, isa po sa pamamaraan para ma-de-escalate is to improve yung healthcare utilization, specifically yung ICU capacity, no? So titignan po niya, I think kaya hindi kayo na-de-escalate is because critical po, lalong-lalo na yung ICU capacity ng Iloilo City. So kung madadagdagan po natin yan, that could be a good way of de-escalating to GCQ with restrictions. Yes, Lizelle.
Secretary Roque, can we accommodate one more question
Go
from
ahead,
our
please.
local media? This time we have Sir Joey Marzan of the Daily Guardian.
Go ahead, please.
Magandang hapon po, Spokesperson Roque. Ano po ba ang basis natin for rejecting the appeal of Iloilo City, given din po na yung latest report po ng DOH Regional Office 6 dito po shows that the 2WGR, the 2-week growth report of Iloilo City is at low, and yung ADAR po is at moderate po.
ICU capacity po.
ICU capacity lang.
You're in critical. Kaya nga po nandito si Yusek Vega as treatment SAR. Titignan po niya if the bed capacity can be increased, if some regular rooms can be converted to ICU rooms, kasi yun po yung ginagawa natin in other places. Well, alam niyo, we don't have to invent the wheel. In Manila alone, no, nung we had to declare ECQ, no, because kulang nga yung ating healthcare, lalo-lalo na yung ating ICU beds, ang ginawa natin talaga is to convert regular rooms into ICU rooms. So from 700, naging 1,400 ba ang ating ICU beds. And that enabled us to de-escalate the community quarantine classification in Metro Manila. So hayaan niyo po, Yusek Vega is here. He will not leave without a solution. Management man po itong si Yusek Vega. He's both a doctor and an MBA degree holder. No? So he has made a tremendous difference since he joined us, beginning with this initiative to start the One Hospital Command Center. I think that's also one of the things that he will be implementing, a regional One Hospital Command Center, para we can utilize all the health resources, not just in the city, but in the entire Region 6.
Follow-up lang po, sir, no? Regarding po sa vaccine prioritization, do we really have to wait na dumami po yung mga kaso at yung mga deaths under COVID para po ma-escalate yung priority ng isang area sa vaccination?
Unfortunately, yes, because of limited supply.
Secretary, can we add one last question?
Go ahead, please.
Okay, we have Victoria Casella from Radio Bandera.
Good day, Secretary Roque. My question is that Iloilo City received 50,000 doses of Sinovac COVID-19 vaccine. However, there are questions about the efficacy of the said vaccine. How do we address this kind of concern?
Wala pong question. Ang Sinovac po has been shown to be safe and effective in the Philippines and by the World Health Organization, and is being utilized by the world's most populous nation, which is China. So wala pong issue sa safety and efficacy. Yusek Roque, are you there? Meron pa bang mag-zoom? Wala na ba talaga mag-zoom? Or Zoom just conked out?
Secretary, meron ka pang 4 na o 5 questions dito from MPC. Pero bago po yan, may gusto lang po i-clarify si Joseph Morong doon sa question niya. Yun daw pong decision ni Pangulong Duterte after Governor Gwen Garcia ng Cebu proposed 2 protocols. Ano na daw po yung final decision?
I think the President had a final decision. And that is there will be one uniform policy for the entire Philippines because of the common danger posed by the Delta variant.
Question from Kylie Atienza ng Business World. Will the PALA support the calls of lawmakers for a full accounting of the funds disbursed under the Bayanihan 1 and 2 laws?
Nako, that's a requirement of the Constitution po. We don't have to support it. It's a legal obligation to make a full accounting. At in fact, pagdating po dun sa mga Bayanihan 1 and 2, weekly reporting nga po ba yun or monthly reporting yun? Basta there was a regular reporting required by the law by itself, which Malacanang complied with. No? Natigil lang po yung monthly reporting on Bayanihan 2 kasi natapos na po yung Bayanihan 2 at ang na-extend lang ay yung disbursement of funds but not the special powers of the President. Kaya, with that, natigil na rin yung regular accounting na rin required ng Kongreso. But of course, all monies coming from government are subject to strict COA rules and are subject to transparency.
From Ivan Mayrina ng GMA News, isang nurse daw po sa Maynila nahuli ng NBI na nagbebenta ng 300 vials ng Sinovac sa halagang 1 million pesos. Mukhang lehitimo po ang vaccine. Reaksyon po ng Malacanang daw dito.
Yan po natin ang investigasyon. I cannot speculate po. Sa totoo lang po, this is the first time I'm hearing about this.
Question from Prince Goles of Politico Abante. Iloilo City Mayor Jerry Treñas earlier said that he would support your senatorial bid in 2022. Does this mean that you are running for a Senate seat next year?
Hindi ko pa po alam, no? Nothing is certain. In the field of politics, nothing is certain until the papers have been filed. So, I continue to pray and ponder on this point po. Although it helps that the city of my mother has said, the mayor of the city of my mother's birthplace has said that he will support me. And I appreciate that very much from the bottom of my heart, Mayor Treñas.
Second question po ni Prince Goles, have you and President Duterte talked about your political plan for 2022? What did he tell you?
Question last siguro?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay, this time we have Sir Joey Marzan of the Daily Guardian.
Sir, follow-up lang din po dun sa natin, no? Questions regarding sa community quarantine statuses ng ating mga areas, no? Sir, para ma-explain din po natin sa taong bayan, ano po ba yung authority ng IATF to mandate ang mga ating mga LGUs to follow ang mga community quarantine na pronouncements ng ating national government?
That's pursuant po to the power of the President to exercise police power to protect public health and pursuant to an executive order issued by the late President Noynoy Aquino. The power to create the IITF, to provide for quarantine classification, was because of an executive issuance of then President Benigno Simeon Noynoy Aquino. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much, Secretary Roque.
Since wala na po tayong mga tanong, Yusek Roque, meron ka pa bang natitira mga tanong?
Secretary Roque, hindi niyo po nasagot yung second question ni Prince Goles. Have you and President Duterte talk about your political plan for 2022? What did he tell you?
That's between me and the President. Thank you very much, Prince.
Secretary, last question po from Ivan Mayrina. You mentioned in the last briefing that the President told you that the administration should already have a clear presidential candidate by June, with Senator Pacquiao seemingly out of the list. Who is the front runner?
Wala pa po. I'm sure, as the President has said in his Talk to the People address, he will tell the people who he will endorse for the position of President for the next elections. Antayin na lang po natin. For the next elections. Antayin na lang po natin.
Last question po, Secretary Roque, from Cresilin Catarong ng SMNI. Sinabi po ni Senator Pamphilo Lacson na kailangan kumilos agad ang mga miyembro ng PDP laban sa harap ng umiinit na bangayan sa pagitan ni Pangulong Duterte at Senator Manny Pacquiao. Ayon po kay Lacson, hindi magandang tingnan kapag patuloy na nagbabangayan ang dalawang opisyal ng bansa, lalo't kapwa tinitingala sila ng publiko. Ano po ang masasabi niyo rito? May pag-asa po kaya na magkaroon ng pulong ang partido kasama si Pangulong Duterte at Pacquiao para ayusin ang alitan ng dalawa?
Nasagot ko na po yan kanina. In politics, anything and everything is possible. And nothing is impossible. Okay, dahil wala na po tayong mga katanungan, I'd like to thank first and foremost our host, Mayor Jerry Treñas, our Congresswoman Jamjam Baronda, the City of Iloilo for hosting us. And maraming salamat din po kay Yusek Vega, kay DOH Regional Assistant Secretary Romeo Ong, DOH Regional Director Dr. Suban, and Director of Logistics Dr. Ariel Valencia. No? Well, I'm here po not just as a presidential spokesperson, I'm here also as an Ilonggo. No? I understand po talaga na marami po tayong kakulangan, lalong-lalo na po pagdating sa bakuna, pero hindi lang po tayong may ganyang problema dito sa Iloilo, the entire country, and majority of the world have similar problems. Yung UN Secretary General na nga po ang nagsabi, we are approaching a situation of almost the grossest injustice and inequality dahil kung sino pong mga mayayaman, sila po talaga ang nangorner ng mga bakuna. Pero nakahanap naman po tayo ng paraan dahil po sa ating mga karatig bansa gaya ng China, Russia at hopefully India soon, nakakuha naman po tayo ng mga bakuna at hindi tayo umasa na makakakuha sa bandang huli. No? At nagkaroon po ng proteksyon ang mahigit na 10 milyong mga kababayan na natin ngayon. Ang hiningi lang po natin, karagdagang pang pasensya at parating naman po ang mga bakuna. So with that, sa ngalan po ng ating Presidente Rodrigo Roa Duterte, maraming salamat sa suporta ng lahat ng mga taga-syudad ng Iloilo at sa buong probinsya ng Iloilo at Pilipinas. Huwag po kayo mag-alala, darating din po ang bakuna. Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat.
Matinding kalaban ng COVID.
Ayokong makahawa.
At mahawa.
Pero kailangan ko na magtrabaho.
Kaya di ako magiging pabaya.
Di matigas ang aking ulo.
Iingatan ko ang aking sarili.
Para maingatan ang pamilya ko.
Ito ang ambag ko. Ako.
Ikaw.
Lahat tayo.
Sama-sama nating
Mayaangat ang bayan.
basta't sama-sama tayo.
Sa pag-ingat buhay.
Para sa ating hanap buhay.
Mask, hugas, iwas.
First, may sense of relief. So it's one step into our country stopping the COVID infection. It's better to be protected than not to be protected at all. So if you have any fears to vaccinate, it's okay to ask, it's okay to read. Maraming mga educational materials available. But ang pinaka-importante is you have yourself vaccinated to protect yourself, to protect your family, and to protect the community.